Be sure to go to flipsidegaming.com and use promo code 6 for 10% off on orders over $10. Do the same with the Grizzly Gentleman, 10% off at checkout on your fantastic beard products. Or you could shop via the TCG Player affiliate link in the description down below to help support the show. And last but of course not least, you can go to Grey Viking Games with the affiliate link below to pillage some sweet arena codes. What is up, Planeswalkers? Theric 6 back with some more Magic the Gathering Commander videos. This is Monday, which means that we're doing some Commander stuff. Later on today, I'll be hopefully on stream with a birthday girl. I'm pretty sure it was Amy, but at this point, my brain is broken. And then on Tuesday, it is my birthday. I think it's Tuesday, March 2nd. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm not going to be doing anything special for my birthday. I have class, like, it's a normal day for me. But yeah, it'll be my birthday soon. But shouts out to Lord Bolas. This is going to be the second type of deck tech video that I'll do on the channel. And I definitely want to once again get your thoughts and feelings on how I'm doing this. Now, you'll note that there's this cool little block box thing here. This is from the Loading Ready Run people. Now, I asked Graham on Twitter, because Paul doesn't have a Twitter. I asked him if I can find this. He showed me where I'm supposed to go, and I was able to download some stuff with the help of a computer science friend of mine, James, and essentially I was able to get this part working. I wasn't able to fully get the other part working, but I think for right now, this is what I'll do, and then hopefully the next time I do a deck tech, we'll have the third option. So you all saw the first option, which with my Rexiel video, and this is the second option. So today we're going to be talking through my Nicol Bolas deck. So you can kind of see the curve there. It's not really a good curve. You can't see the curve. Shut up. It's not great. It's like a flat line. But I've been trying in my EDH decks to incorporate more ramp, so that's where we're going to start first. I do want to note, I have 37 lands in this deck. I've seen a lot of people play just like 35 lands. I don't like it. I think that's nuts. When you're playing a singleton format like this, I think that it's very imperative that you can play lands on curve. Like, you want to be able to hit most of your land drops, and obviously that'll change based on your average CMC and things like that, but for the most part, I try not to drop below 36 at the lowest. I think most of my decks right now are at 37, but I could be wrong. Anyway, ramp. We start off with ramp, and I have 10 pieces of ramp that I want to go through. Now, this is a blue, black, red deck, so essentially all of our ramp is going to come in the form of artifact ramp. However, Wayfarer's Bauble is a card that is super important, because it essentially is a rampant growth for a non-green deck. Why do I say this? It's because, sure, you have to have that initial investment of 1 mana, and I guess technically someone could blow it up if they want, but being able to get a basic land on the battlefield tapped is often going to be so much better than having just a Signet or Talisman, because your Signets and Talismans can get blown the hell up. Speaking of Signets and Talismans, we have an Arcane Signet, helps your all of the commander colors, obviously better the more colors that you have, and then we have one of each of the Ravnica Signets. I was like, where are these things from? And we also have one of each of the Talismans. I've noticed that people play the Signets a ton, but they don't play the Talismans as often, and they essentially do the same thing. Now, yes, technically, you can take damage if you have to use it, similar to a like a Llanowar Wastes, Llanowar Reborn. I don't remember. But you know, the Pain Lands, Caves of Koilos, things like that. But you don't have to do that, right? Depending on, of course, your exact mana needs, you can go ahead and just use the colorless mana. But the reason they're still fine is because we have 40 life in this format. Taking 1 or 2 damage here or there from your lands, essentially, is not going to be too bad. We're also running Thought Vessel. Now, why am I running so many 2-mana rocks? You'll notice that I'm not running 3-mana rocks. For example, I have a decent number of dragons in here, but I'm not running Dragon's Horde. I'm not running, Commander Sphere, Chromatic Lantern. I'm not running those things. Why is that? It's because of my commander. We want to bring it back to Nicol Bolas the Ravager again. The reason that I'm running 2 mana accelerants is because I want to be able to play my commander 1 turn earlier. Being able to get Bolas down on turn 3 makes it so that I'm disrupting my opponent's plans more often and earlier, so they're going to not know exactly, they're not going to necessarily have, oh, it's a Garbo card, I don't need it. when you're disrupting them early, you get some good situations. Additionally, your opponents are less likely to have immediate board presence, so you can start hitting in with your cheaper commander. Also, if you can get under counter spells, then you might be able to ramp up to flipping him sooner than you otherwise would. So I think those were all of the artifact ones. And then we have As Foretold. As Foretold, I put in the ramp category, despite the fact that it doesn't truly ramp you. And now, when I make my EDH decks, I very frequently start with, I start with, what's the theme that I want to play with, right? So with Bolas, it's a Bolas theme. There are cards here that aren't on theme. Technically speaking, Bolas went to Ravnica, so sure, the signets, you could justify them. Bolas hasn't really done much with Mirrodin. This isn't even on Mirrodin. But still, it doesn't matter too much. With As Foretold, this is a slot where I like the rest of my ramp package enough that I'm able to include one piece of just on flavor ramp here. And that's what I try to do with most of these categories. I try to have an amount of them be on flavor, with the rest being just good stuff. And it changes as we get down. I'll talk a little bit more about this. But As Foretold is a card that I just want to run because it's a Bolas card. It's also it's not terrible. It's not great either. Don't get me wrong. Drawing this on turn 3, playing this on turn 3, great. Playing this on literally any other turn, not great. And it also, I guess, depends on the speed of your format, right? I don't expect the games that I play in to be over on turn 5 or 6 or 7. 8, 9, 10 plus, sure, but I expect to get some sort of use out of this. So that's the ramp. Let's then go to the removal. And I technically have 18 pieces of removal in this deck. And removal can mean different things to different people, but I've separated them into 3 categories, essentially. We have counter magic, single target removal, and multi-target removal. Counterspells, very obvious. These are just things that operate on the stack. You all know what counterspells are. Single target removal is removal that hits essentially one thing. Do I have anything on here that hits more than one? Kind of, but we'll talk about it. These essentially are going to get rid of a thing, a permanent. They don't have to be creatures. For example, our first one for a single target removal is Rakdos Charm, right? Rakdos Charm doesn't get rid of a creature, but it has some other nuances there. But we'll come back to it. And then multi-target removal, or multi-thing removal, is essentially what it is. That's the place for board wipes. If I had Vandal Blast would be in there. I guess Vandal Blast is technically a board wipe for artifacts. But it's for things that get rid of more than one thing at a time. But let's start off with the single target removal. We have Rakdos Charm here. I put it in the single target removal slot, despite the fact that it can do other things. If possible, and I talk about this a lot when I'm making my Abzan historic decks, if possible, when you're making your decks, add versatility there. This thing destroys an artifact, fantastic. Also, it can be a win con if your opponent is infinite tokening, or you can just exile someone's graveyard. It's good. Then we go to Bedevil. Bedevil is pretty strong, it's versatile, but it only does hit one thing at a time. But being able to kill an artifact, creature, or planeswalker at any point in the game is quite nice. Next up we have Croesus's Charm. Croesus's Charm is just a cool card. One, it's pseudo-flavorful, because Croesus is also in this deck, and I like Croesus. Croesus feels to me like a mini Bolas, like little baby Bolas, because essentially he is, But yeah, you can bounce something, any permanent, which is nice. You can bounce someone's land. If your opponent, for example, has a Core Haven or a Maze of Ith or a Glacial Chasm, you can bounce that, and bada bing, bada boom, they're dead, right? So you can do good things like that. You can also just destroy a non-black creature, can't be generated. Black is a relatively popular color in Commander, so if it only did that, it'd be a bad card. You also can just destroy an artifact. So a bunch of pretty decent things here. Next up, we have Deadly Rollick, right there. The free spells. I want to talk really quickly about the free spells. They're not good for the game. Okay, so the thing is, some commanders you really need to have in play in order to have the deck go according to plan. And you can have feel bad situations where your commander just keeps dying. Luckily, Nicol Bolas doesn't really suffer that issue. But if you're playing something like Mael, I suppose, I'm just looking at my commanders here. Gisa. Oh gosh, Captain Sisse. Right, when you're playing those things, you really want them to stay in play. But you have to like tap out to play them, blah blah blah. So Wizards, has some free spells. They choose lots of free spells. Pretty good. Being able to just yeet a creature for free is not too broken, right? It's not too busted. Deadly Rollick just allows you to exile a creature. Cool, it's fun. 4 mana to do so, that's reasonable. 0 mana to do so if I have Bolas in play is quite nice, especially since Bolas costs 4. Sometimes you can be in a situation where your opponent on turn 2 plays some like stupid accelerant card, or on turn 3 depending on turn order and stuff, and then like you play your Bolas and immediately snipe a thing. Not necessarily the best thing to do, but it's something that you have an option to do. Then we have something that you might not consider to be single target removal. I have Court of Ire here. Now, Court of Ire, 1 gives you the Monarch, so it has kind of card advantage in there as well. Card advantage we'll get to in a bit. But the reason I put it in here, the goal that it's meant to serve, is to destroy things. I look at the card, on average, as its worst part. So I don't have the Monarchy, right? So at worst, I get 2 damage on my upkeep. 2 damage can kill a lot of things. 2 damage can help you kill a lot of other things. 2 damage is also not an insignificant amount necessarily if you're doing it over and over again to someone's life total. You can think of something like Perforos. Obviously, Perforos is way different, but you can still like see that like even just the 2 damage here and there from Perforos is a little annoying. But being able to potentially 7 things, that's good removal. And technically, you could put this in multi-hit removal, but the reason I put it in single is because at a time, like, you can only hit 1 at a time. And then the last one for single target is in Bolas' Clutches. This doesn't truly remove the permanent, it gives it to you, which essentially is removal. Also, it's on theme. Like, I had to have in Bolas' Clutches on here. It's on theme, like, bite me. Next, we'll talk about the counter spells. I have Counter Squall, which I believe has a Bolas version, which I don't have the art for on here. I think I have the actual art on the card that I own. But yeah, you counter a non-creature spell, its control loses 2. It's just a cool counter spell. It's on theme. Deck doesn't need it, but I want it. There's Guardianship though. I don't own this card yet because it's rather expensive, because it's rather dumb. For certain commanders, you're gonna really want this, but having a card that has essentially no downside, like you don't have to exile anything, like Force of Negation, Force of Will. You don't have an upkeep trigger like Pact of Negation, so you kind of just have this actually free card. It only hits non-creatures, but well, we have the other card. Where is it? Deadly Rollick to deal with creatures. So it's strong. It's strong. It definitely is strong. And the main reason I have it in this Bolas deck is to essentially stop people from winning. If someone's going to cast a spell that makes them win, you counter it. Is that fun? I don't know. I don't know. What sucks about this deck, I should say, is that Bolas is currently in a prison realm. I'm not going to get very many new cards for this over time. That makes me sad. I will likely pivot to having a little bit less Bolas, potentially, and a little bit more discard as time goes on, but for right now, we're okay. Next, we'll get to the multi-hit thing. So we have Finale of Eternity. Technically speaking, this is a negative card. I understand it represents Bolas losing, but it still has Bolas on it, okay? So shut up. But also, you get to kill 3 creatures. That's more than 1 at a time. And, if you happen to have a bunch of mana, you can reanimate creatures in your graveyard. We don't have a ton of creatures. We got, 19? But still, it has some helpful stuff. We have Force of Despair. Now, Force of Despair has a cost. It can be free, but it has a cost. You have to exile a black card from your hand. This card has done work for me. This card is something I've played with for a while, and being able to just complete... It's similar to... Cyclonic Rift, which you can see that I'm not playing because I fucking hate that card. But it's similar, but more fair. If one of your opponents like is just going off, say with like a Kiki Jiki combo, or even just making an absurd number of tokens fairly, you know, landfall triggers and stuff like that, you should be like, nah. But what's nice, what you have to realize is sometimes just one-for-oneing, essentially, killing 2 of their creatures for 2 of your cards, can be very fine if the creatures that you're getting rid of are really strong. So it's cool stuff. I like Force of Despair a lot. Then we have Damnation. I will say, I have Damnation. I have Seb McKinnon's Damnation. I don't have this version of Damnation. I want to at some point, but it is a little bit too much money for my jib. Too much cut for my jib. Damnation, it's Wrath of God but black. It's great. You want control, you play this card. Rags to Riches is a weird card. It's on theme. It's Amonkhet. It has some Aftermath extra stuff. It's one of the weaker cards in the deck. This is another instance, essentially, of like an As Foretold style card, where I'm playing a card more because it's on theme. Like Force of Despair. Finality counts. Force of Despair doesn't really work. But that's still just a strong card, and, Bolas would play something that forces people to be in despair. But Rags to Riches is, it's a bit of a liberty. It's fine. Next one, though, Crux of Fate. Crux of Fate is definitely on theme, and you can destroy non-dragons, or all dragons. If for some reason you're going against like an Ur-Dragon deck or something like that, you can blow up all dragons. But most of the time, you get to blow up non-dragon. So your opponents might have a dragon here or there, but realistically, you get to keep your Nicol Bolas, maybe your Croesus, maybe your other Nicol Bolas. I don't know if this, how many dragons I have in this deck. I used to have more, for what it's worth. Yeah, it's a board wipe. It has Bolas on it. And of course, we have our Devastation. It's a board wipe. It has Bolas. And it even keeps our Planeswalker Boluses alive, which is great, because sometimes your opponents are playing Planeswalkers and your board wipes just don't get rid of them. This gets rid of their Planeswalkers. It also removes indestructibility, which can sometimes be an issue. Say with some of the Amonkhet gods, yeah, they had indestructible. Yeah, I think. Regardless, the Theros gods, they have indestructible. Get rid of them, blow them up. Right, the Theros gods as commanders can be very annoying sometimes because they're hard to get rid of. Goodbye. It's fantastic. So that was the removal in the deck. I have like 18-ish. We're playing essentially a control deck, more of a mid-range deck, I suppose. But how about our card advantage? We want to make sure that we're getting a lot of card advantage. I have 22 technical sources for that. And I've seen different people talk about different things. You should have like 10 ramp. I think it's like 10 ramp, 10 draw, 5 single target removal, 5 multi-removal. I split it up a little differently. So my card advantage is 22, and it has card draw, aka putting cards into your hand, discard, or getting rid of opponent's cards, and then other. They do multiple things. Don't have a ton of other, but still. I'll start with card draw. Our first one is Deliver Unto Evil. Deliver Unto Evil is flavorful, and it rebuys if you have a Bolas in play. It has to be a Planeswalker for what it's worth. You can't just work with your Nicol Bolas or Ravager, but your group might be fine and say that you can do it with your Ravager. They probably won't because you're playing a discard deck. But yeah, you get to just 3 mana, draw 4. Essentially. You're drawing them from your graveyard, that's fine. You use your removal on your opponent's things, you get your removal back. Sometimes you're not going to have a Bolas Planeswalker out. You can still get 2 of those cards, right? You have to have someone choose those cards, but if you're in a situation where you're not in the lead, so let's say you're playing a 4-player game and you are in maybe 2nd or 3rd, maybe even 4th, you can partner with one of the other players who's not in 1st and say, hey, I'm going to choose these 4 cards. I will use this one to get rid of that big annoying thing that's annoying the whole table, or even just specifically you. In exchange, you'll give me this card. Now, there's no guarantee that your opponent is going to be nice and actually honor their word, but I made a poll on that, and it seems like the majority of, at least of my viewers, do hold to their promises. I had a reason for making the poll. So yeah, so you are able to do some things where you can get extra stuff, but also it's card advantage. Like, this is on theme, but also works with the deck. And when you're building, I said this earlier, I think, if you're building for a theme, try to make sure your cards that are on theme also fit into a category, right? If you want to run 10 counterspells in your deck, and let's say you want the deck to be, let's say, Azorius themed, right? There are some Azorius counterspells that are great. Render Silence, Absorb, obviously. Maybe you play one that's not great. Follow the Gavel, for example. And then the rest, you can just make good counterspells. Oh wait, Dolphin's Veto. Dolphin's Veto counts as well. So yeah, that's 4 on-theme ones, and you make 6 that are also good. There might be other like Azorius counterspells that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but shut up. I guess technically you could use Syncopate, although I think the art for that when it was in Return to Ravnica was Dimir. Regardless, if you have cards that are on theme, you can go ahead and I read Deliver Unto on my sheet here. I have it. Y'all couldn't see that, but it looked like Deliver Uwu, and I was like, why did I write this? No, yeah, be on theme, but still have things work. Atris. Atris does not make sense in a Bolas deck. It's a good card, that's why it's in here. The Menace has been helpful for me in a deck like this. It fills up my graveyard for things like Deliver Unto Evil. And it's another thing that's like, feels like some stuff Bolas would do, right? Unfortunately, we're not going to be getting a lot of Bolas anytime soon. So, he's probably not going to get replaced very quickly. Regardless, I do like Atris. Deep Analysis. It has to be the Jesper Icing art, or Jesper Icing, because this is the best Bolas art, period, bar none. This is the greatest depiction of our Lord Nicol Bolas ever. And I hope that in the future, when Bolas comes back, we get some more up from Jesper. But yeah, this is just a 4-mana, target player draws 2. Now, you might be saying, target player, why would you ever want to target your opponents? If you're in a situation where you know that your deck doesn't have the ability to remove something, let's say enchantment removal. This deck can't deal with enchantments, but you really need someone to deal with enchantments. You can still use this on someone else. You can use this in a number of ways. If them drawing cards leads to them discarding cards, which is the last bit of life you need to kill them, for example, then that could work. There's a bunch of different scenarios. Also, flashback 2 mana, pay 3 life. Who cares? Like it's draw cards with Bolas on it. It's fine. It's fine. We have Disciple of Bolas. Disciple of Bolas is not great because we don't have a ton of creatures, and you have to sacrifice another creature. I understand it's not great. But there aren't a ton of Bolas references in the game, so that's why I have Disciple in here. This is the as foretold of the advantage area. You can technically gain life and stuff. That's cool. For the most part, Disciple of Bolas. So there's actually a funny thing that you can do in this deck where you have Nicol Bolas, the actual creature, out, and then you sacrifice it to Disciple of Bolas to draw 7 and gain 7. I wouldn't suggest doing it. Bolas might be mad at you. Then we have Kefers. Now you might think, why did I put Kefers in the advantage column? Because it functionally, when it triggers, it functionally puts a card in your hand. Being able to cast the copied version of the card that you draw means that you didn't cast the real version. Means that you've functionally drawn an additional card. So that's why Kefers is here. Also, it's a God Eternal, and it's annoying to deal with. Then we have Kess. Very similar. Essentially, you can flashback a spell, and it's similar to Kefnet. It doesn't truly add a card to your hand, but what it does do is allow you to use a card that isn't otherwise in your hand. So if you have 0 cards in your hand, you don't actually have 0 cards in your hand. You still have things to do. So that's why Kess is here as well. Then we move on to Notion Thief, which is not Opposition Agent or Hull Breacher, and neither of those cards are in this deck because me and my friends and I have decided, my main play group have decided we're just not going to play those cards. Or at least, we definitely decided that with Hull Breacher. We are still rocking with Opposition Agent. I think we just don't search enough for that to matter in our meta. But yeah, Notion Thief essentially is just like, hey, screw you. You're drawing more cards? Nope. I'm going to draw now. Bite me. Steal the thoughts from their head. It's great. Then we have Bantu. We have Bantu. There we go. Technically, card advantage. It's in here because technically you can use it as card advantage. You can blow up excess lands. If one of your creatures has an enchantment on it that makes it so it's essentially inert, you can go ahead and sacrifice that. If you have an Ask Foretold that just really isn't doing it for you, you know, waste not, maybe you don't need your talismans anymore, you can just go ahead and sacrifice them for more cards. It is technically advantage. Nightclaw Shaman, you get to look at someone else's hand and cast one of their spells. Technically advantage for the same reason that Kess is. Also, it is a reference to Lord Bolas, so bite me. And then we have Bolas' Citadel. This is literal card advantage because you get to play with the top of our library. However, it can hurt you. We do have 40 life in this format, though, so it might not, or at least not enough. Next, we'll go on to the discard spells. So we have Bottomless Pit. By the way, I will have the timestamps for all of the subsections, if I remember. We have Bottomless Pit. Now, this does force each player to discard a card, and it is at random, but this card's hilarious. If you've made a deck that has discard to even some extent, play this for at least a little bit. Your opponents will hate you. You will hate yourself. Sometimes you play Bottomless Pit, and then you lose your 4th land, and you can't play your Bolas. Sometimes you play Bottomless Pit, and your opponents only discard lands, they can't play for the rest of the game, and you win. It's hilarious. Now for some metagames, side effects may include your friends no longer being your friends. We have Sidraxis Spectre. This is from Grixis, one of the places that Bolas was around for a while. It deals combat damage to the player. That player discards a card. You get to unearth it. It's cool stuff. The reason I chose this Spectre specifically is because it's related to Bolas. Plenty that relate to like Liliana or just like setting agnostic or whatever. But Sidraxis Spectre at least is from Grixis, which is where Bolas had plans hatch from. Next up we have Court of Ambition, which should be down. Court of Ambition's 4 mana. I always think it's 5. Court of Ambition, it's another court. Essentially, we get the monarchy and stuff, and then it's kind of like Torment of Scarabs, I guess. I don't know why Torment of Scarabs is not in this deck, actually, now that I think about it. But they have to discard a card, unless they have to lose 3 unless they discard a card. Typically, they're just going to lose 3. But when you are the Monarch, they have to lose 6 unless they discard 2 cards. Now, they're still probably going to lose 6. 6 is a lot. It's almost a 1/7 of your max HP. Max HP. In Commander. But even just like force them to discard. Now the thing about it, right, isn't unless they choose discard, right? If they can't discard a card, they can't discard a card. So if they have no cards in hand, they're going to be losing 3. If they don't have 2 cards in hand, they're going to be losing 6, right? So that's just some fun stuff. And it relates to Painful Quandary. Whenever opponent casts a spell, they lose 5 unless they discard a card. This ramps up fast, right? Essentially, all of their cards are now 2 for 1, right? They have to use 2 cards functionally to get use out of 1 card, or they can take 5. That is straight up an 1/8 of their life. That adds up real fast, and when you're doing this to everyone, you're gonna become target number 1, baby. So don't do it all the time. Banshee, force people to discard. I thought this was interesting for multiplayer. I don't think I've played this card very often, which might mean it needs to change. But it has some cool. It has a cool ability for multiplayer. I haven't used it all that much, so I wanted to keep it around for a while. So sure, it's fine essentially. Then we have Croesus, baby. Croesus is so cool. I don't care. Chris Rahn did a fantastic job on this art. But what's great about Croesus is the fewer colors your opponent is playing, just the more brutal this is, right? Hit your mono white opponent or your red green opponent and just name one of the colors and just watch them discard so many cards from their hand, and then you just get like those sweet discard triggers. You know, you got your Liliana's Caress, your Waste Knots, things like that. It is just beautiful. Absolutely love it. Also, it's essentially like a little mini Bolas. Little mini Bolas. Speaking of Bolas, we have big Bolas in this deck. This deck used to be a big Nicol Bolas deck, but then small Nicol Bolas came out. So for what it's worth, when it was a bigger Nicol Bolas deck, I didn't have the talismans. I instead used more 3 CMC mana rocks, because they would do other things. Command Sphere, or Commander's Beacon, whatever. Command Sphere, and the other one, they do different things. But Nicol Bolas, essentially, you hit your opponent, and they lose their hand. Period. That's just what he does. He can touch people and make them literally lose their mind. He does come with a consistent upkeep cost of grixis mana. But if you can cast him in the first place, you should be able to upkeep pay for that mana. And then the last one for discard advantage, would be Myojin of Night's Reach. I played this card a lot actually in this deck, despite the fact that it's 8 mana. It's really fun to just yeet cards out of people's hands. Dude, people will get so... And the great thing is that you can remove the divinity counter at any point. This is not as a sorcery. This is whenever you want. It's indestructible while it's on here. Of note, just because it looks like it's flying doesn't mean it's flying. It can't fly. It cannot block flyers. I have messed that up so many times, but still. Yeah, you essentially just like get some fun things where you just have this out and your opponent's like, I can't, like I have like a wheel effect in my hand, dude. I don't want to do this because it's only opponents. I don't have any wheels in this deck, I realized. This plus wheels are pretty funny. Anyway, that's it for the discard. Then we have like 4 of the kind of other, like it gives you advantage, but it's not, it doesn't fall into either of those other categories. We have Waste Not. It helps us with our discard. If we do this on turn 2 instead of one of our ramp artifacts, then on turn 3, we play Bottomless Pit or something. Turn 4, we play Bolas. We can get a lot of cool, interesting things here. Getting a little bit of a bolstering in our defenses with our zombies, getting some extra mana to cast some of the higher CMC things faster, or just getting to draw cards, especially if we have Bottomless Pit and we're discarding cards. It means that we can get some nice advantage here, which is why it's in this. Dark Intimations, it lets us do a number of things. It's essentially like the Eldritch Reborn. It's like the Eldritch Reborn in a single card, / it's a small Cruel Ultimatum, right? Except this affects each opponent. So the fact that you just have them each sack a thing, discard a card, and then you return a creature Planeswalker, and then you get to draw a card. You are, in a 4-player game, you are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 for winning, right? You spend 1 card, you get 8 pieces of value. And then, of course, if you cast a Planeswalker, Bolas, you exile this, and they get an extra loyalty counter. And that can mean the difference between your Planeswalker dying when you menace it or something like that. So that's some cool stuff. Then we have actual Eldritch Reborn. It's literally the story of Bolas. You can't not play this. Forces each opponent to sacrifice a thing. Forces each opponent to discard a card. And then you get a thing back to the battlefield. This, as I said, is essentially Dark Intimations. A little different, but still. Then we have Cruel Ultimatum. This is target opponent. If it was each, that'd be too strong. But still, they sack a thing, they discard 3, they lose 5, you get a thing back to your hand, you draw 3 and you gain 5. I do wish that this was get a creature back into play, but whatever. It's still fine. I will say, I don't love the art of Bolas here. I did a whole review of all of the Bolas arts, but still. So those were my advantage cards. Then we have some others. I didn't know where to put these. Liliana's Caress, technically a win con. We have some discard stuff. We forced discard. Liliana worked for Bolas. It's justifiable. We have Torment of Hailfire. This is a win con. It has Bolas on it. Cool. It's essentially exsanguinate, but it works with Bolas, and we do have ways of getting to high X's. But even you don't even have to have that many high X's, right? If you have been playing the game where your opponent just like doesn't have much of a board because you've been using your board wipes, they don't have much of a hand because you've been using your discard, they don't have much of life because you've been using your Court of Ambition, your Court of Ire, your Painful Quandary, right? They're going to be kind of low on resources to spend, and their life total is going to be low where they just die, or if they don't die, they become incredibly crippled from the hit that they've taken from Torment of Hailfire. Then we have Spark Double. This thing is here to copy Bolas the Ravager or one of our Planeswalkers. That's its main job. Then we have the God triplets: Scarab God, Scorpion God, and Locust God. All of these are in here because they are very on theme, but also they're strong in their own right? Scarab God allows you to just reanimate cards from your opponent's graveyards. The fact that you, for what it's worth, you can reanimate your own cards, but you don't have to. The fact that you could do it this instant speed is great. The fact that you get extra benefit from like scrying and them losing life, each opponent losing life, is nice. But also, like, it's graveyard hate, right? Scarab God is card advantage, pseudo removal. It just makes your opponent's things weaker, but it does mean that, like, if you're playing against certain tribes, you can very easily make their boards kind of obsolete, right? If you're playing against an elf tribal deck that is less of the ramp into big monster that makes your creatures huge, and more of the, like, I'm just gonna play a few lords, you can kill those lords pretty easily. It's relatively weak. I'm not gonna lie to you. And then we have Locust God. You just get to make stupid board. There's plenty of card draw in this deck. You just make big insects a lot. It's cool stuff. Command the Dread Horde is a 40 life format. It's 40 life. You can just spend 10, 20, 15, 20 life, get back an enormous board, and just win. Or you can do that and your opponent cast a Cyclonic Rift and you scoop and say next game, and then you play something else because you realize your hopes have been dashed. Anyway, we got good old-fashioned Dragon Lord Silumgar. You get to steal something. Creature Planeswalker, you get to steal it. I considered putting this in single target removal, but it felt wrong to put that there, even though I put in Bolas' Clutches there. I don't really know why. I just do things sometimes. God Pharaoh statue. It makes your stuff cheaper, and it hurts your opponents a little bit. Does not feel like it should be anywhere else. I don't know where it should be. Shield Dread is in here literally because she's strong. That's it. Like, technically, Bolas sent Tezzeret to, like, scope out New Phyrexia, but I guess you could make that connection. I have her in here because she's strong, and I like Shield Dread. That's kind of all. And then Sphinx of the Second Sun. It works in the theme. It's a Sphinx from Amonkhet. But also, it just makes it so that you have additional main phase, so you get extra draw step, which is dope. Extra upkeep doesn't matter too much. It does help with things like the Scarab God and your Quartz, but other than that, I don't think it helps all that much. Then we have our Planeswalkers. We have, obviously, Dragon God. I'm not going to talk about the Planeswalkers necessarily. They're all, almost all, Bolas. So we have Dragon God, we have Liliana Dreadhorde General, obviously. Got God Pharaoh, and we have Planeswalker. Oh, right, I totally forgot. We also have Deceiver. Yeah, we're even playing the bad Planeswalker deck one. I will talk about this one. It is 8 mana for a 5 Loyalty Walker, +3. Each opponent loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. Okay, this essentially is +3, each opponent loses 3, which is not terrible for what it's worth. -3, destroy target creature, draw a card. Also not terrible. -11, Nicol Deceiver deals 7 damage to each opponent, you draw 7 cards. Again, not terrible. He just costs a little too much to be, like, as good as the others. So now we're going to talk about the lands. I'm not going to bring the lands over to the thing because I'd be doing too much. And I'm also, I didn't put the lands in any particular order. We're just going to talk about the lands, right? You might notice I have a large number of basics here. I've found that I've been over non-basic in a lot of my EDH decks. I have not had any issues with my color requirements in this deck. And before, you know, you had the Ravnica bounce lands. I had, gosh, what are those things called? I had the filter lands. For what it's worth, one of the reasons I took the filter lands out of this is because too many of my decks had the filter lands. I'll talk about that in another video. But yeah, I realized, like, I want the deck to have more feeling of the theme. And one of the ways you can do that is with your basic land choice, right? I'm lucky in that I get to have not only Amonkhet full arts, but Amonkhet full arts that are directly, like, Bolas, right? You have they could have just kept them pristine, is what I'm saying. Instead of having Amonkhet, they have Hour of Devastation, right? So definitely, when you're making your decks, even if they're 3 colors, consider, like, how often you have perfect mana, and you can, like, slowly dial your amount of basic lands a little higher. It also helps you against, you know, Blood Moon effects, things like that, which I think more people should be running. Anyway, we have the shock lands: Blood Crypt, Steam Vents, Water Grave. Or the check lands. Giant Steel Summit, Giant Catacombs, Sulphur Falls. We have the Amonkhet Cycle lands, Canyon Slough, and Fetid Pools. And then we have the temples. Temple of Deceit, Temple of Epiphany, Temple of Malice. And those are the main things that we have. Right. We also have a couple of 3-color cards in here. We got Command Tower, produces any colors, and then Crumbling Necropolis. Crumbling Necropolis is in this deck. Well, it's not this art, no, for what it's worth. It's the Grixis art, because it's Grixis, right? It works with Bolas' story. If we had the Triumph, we would probably replace a basic land, because I wouldn't want to remove Crumbling Necropolis. Technically, you should play with relatively few tap lands, but I like the Crumbling Necropolis in a deck like this. It feels good. We also have Command Beacon. If we can cast our Bolas a few times, you know, the fact that it costs 4 is pretty good, right? 4, and then 6, and then 8, we can pretty much cast them up to that point. 3 times. We get away with 10. But once we get up there, you're going to want to sack the Command Beacon and bring it back. Very good. It's very good to do. But Bojuka Bog. We can afford to, so we're playing a Bojuka Bog. Being able to just hit someone's graveyard, quite nice. We have Cabal Coffers and Urborg. Now, the reason these are in here is so that we can have really big Torment of Hailfires. This sometimes is Garbo, right? This only cares about your swamps. We have a decent number of swamps. We got this, we got this, we got these swamps. But without this, it's not great. The opportunity cost of this card is not very high. Being able to do this is pretty dope. We have a Forge of Heroes to make our Bolas a little bit bigger. 4 mana, 5 mana, 5/5, I guess. 4 mana, yeah, 5, essentially, because you have to tap this. 4 mana to make our Bolas a 5/5 instead is fine. What's nice is that when you flip that Bolas, you can also tap this to put a loyalty counter on it when it flips, which is very good. We have Reliquary Tower. Sometimes we just have a lot of cards. We don't always, it's not super needed, but sometimes it happens. I believe that is everything. I think I talked a little bit too much during this video because I talked a little bit too much about my ethos. But yeah, this is the second style of video protection for the EDH decks. Let me know what you all think about this style. And yeah, I have a PO box for you to send me things. I will open them on camera unless you don't want me to. I'd like to thank my lovely patrons, especially Fogwin, Malik, and Balater, for the continued support. If you'd like to join them and support the show, you'll find links in the description down below. Do, of course, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. Of course, until next time, I'll be one.